The Cartographer's Confession, a Gothic tale of ink, plague, and erasure, by A.M. Blackmere. Please enjoy the story and support the author. I killed a city with ink. Not some melodramatic flourish for the annals, though I can wield a flourish as deftly as any master cartographer on the guild rolls. I mean that I, Annalise of the Van Den Burke workshop, drew a line, and in doing so erased 60,000 souls from the map and from all knowledge and consideration, as neatly as one might excise the unsightly knuckle of a peninsula from a portolan. I pressed my nib to the vellum, coaxed out a shallow wound in blackest seed oil, and the city, its quays, its plague bells, its market criers, its crumbling palazzi, and the children who pilfered quince from my doorstep, bled quietly out of the world. The ink, of course, got everywhere. Let me say that the hand in the moment barely trembled. There are many things a cartographer can risk, a miscalculated meridian, a misnamed strait, but a quavering graticule is an unforgivable sin. Still, I was not made of stone, and the act itself was like any first crime, at once humiliating and exhilarating, equal parts bile and aria. I needed to believe it was a necessary measure. Even now, as I sat hunched in the candle-wrecked twilight, ink nibs scattered among the ruins of my atlas, the urge to justify claws its way up the back of my throat. I should tell you how it all began. That's the proper thing, isn't it? A confession should begin at the beginning, so the penitent and the judge may weigh the full ledger of the thing. The first time I learned what a line could do, I was a girl of 12 in my father's shop, back when he still believed in the clean separations of his trade. A map then was an act of faith, faith that the world yielded to the grid, that wind and water could be tamed and labeled by any hand steady enough to scribe them. My father took commissions from princes and merchants, each of them asking, demanding, some new boundary to be fixed, some fresh claim to be notarized with ink and gold leaf. My task, at first, was the soft labor, scraping vellum, grinding verdigris for the sea. Scraping vellum, grinding verdigris for the sea, coaxing cochineal pinks from dried beetles. That afternoon, years before the quarantine map, years before the city's excision, I sat at the front bench, my apron stiff with glue and spilled shellac. Father was away at the dockmaster's hall, and the rain kept all honest trade indoors. I worked at a practice chart, a child's riddle of rivers and counties, the sort of exercise meant to teach the gesture of a line rather than its consequence. My mind drifted. Beneath my teeth, a loose milk molar pulsed with pain and distracted me. I drew a river, more for amusement than anything, a tributary snaking north where none had any right to flow. When Father returned that evening, he brought with him a merchant from Lubeck, a man with a draper's eyes and the voice of a millstone. They huddled over my childish map. The merchant, wet-haired and smelling of tallow and foreign musk, jabbed at the river I had invented. "There is no such thing," he said, and his voice made my jaw ache in sympathy. My father, mortified, shooed me from the table and apologized in the clipped formalities reserved for professional shame. But in the morning, the talk in the square was of a flood. A hamlet to the north, one I'd blithely trespassed with my pen, had been lost to a sudden current. Its fields and sheep and thatch-roofed mill washed out overnight. The river that erased it from the world did not exist on any map save mine, with its childish blue band, its forgivable lie. There, in the brittle light of dawn, my father took my hand and pressed it flat to the parchment, as if by force he might squeeze out the truth. He looked at me with a fear I have since seen only in locked wards and confessionals. After that, I was not permitted to draw without supervision. But what apprentice can resist the call of blank vellum and a drawer full of sharpened reeds? Alone, I returned each day to my secret atlas, testing the limits of my hand's dominion. A path, then a wall, a lake, then a prison, a border, then a war. I charted absences, erasures. A child's cruelty is boundless, and so was the reach of my lines. Years passed. The world outside changed its address, but little else. I earned my master's stamp before I bled, and my name was stitched onto the guild rules with as much ceremony as my father's shaking hand could lend it. I moved my shop to the East Quarter, overlooking the contorted ribs of the old city wall, and for a year I mapped only what needed mapping, nothing more. I told myself I had learned restraint. Then came the fever. They called it the wet death, as if the city were a loaf left too long in the rain. It started in the low marshes, in the shanties of gutter rights and salt boilers, then rose with the miasmas, seeping through alley and arcade until the bell ringers fell silent for lack of living hands. They summoned me, men of gold chain and wormy conscience, to a hall thick with vinegar and fear. They did not ask if I could help. They told me I would. Containment, they insisted. A firm and just parameter. Their words scratched like brittle ink, promising salvation while their eyes gleamed with self-preservation. I bowed, the hypocrisy echoing louder than any bell. They wanted a cordon sanitaire, a ring of ink to stave off panic and keep the fire from spreading. What they didn't know was that I'd already mapped the city 1,000 times in my sleep, each iteration colder and more precise than the last. I saw the border before I even picked up the pen, a garrote of black looping the infected corridors, cinching tighter with every heartbeat. I drew it as instructed, carefully, beautifully, with the kind of meticulous grace that turns a boundary into a benediction. The pigment bled through the vellum with a heaviness that reminded me of the human body. How the smallest cut could spill so much. When the final circuit closed, a faint tremor shivered through the page, and then, impossibly, the city itself. From my garret above the canal, I heard the first groan of the stones. The old city wall, held together by 4 centuries of lime and superstition, began to thicken. Alleyways closed like stitched wounds. In the marshside districts, lines of earth erupted as if the pox had burrowed straight into the bone. I pressed my open palm to the ink until it pooled beneath my fingers. Some hope that, by ruining the draft, I could unwind the effect. But the line would not lift. Not from the vellum. Not from the world. The next morning, the city's heartbeat had grown faint, but not silent. The bells had stopped, but the people had not. From my window, I watched as mothers in black shawls battered at the new walls with bare hands, their fists leaving blood-dark polka dots on the limestone, as if desperate to punctuate their own erasure. The council sent runners street to street, assuring all that the measures were temporary, for the good of the whole, that their sacrifices would be remembered. Lies. Every one. I had mapped a city I could never again traverse. I had collapsed neighborhoods into silence. I was told to draw a line. I drew a noose. For 3 days, I did not sleep. The city rotted on its side of the line, not mine. On mine, the silence thickened until even the river seemed ashamed to slip beneath the bridges. No letters came, save for the council's directives, urgent, contradictory, always signed in another hand. I tried to work, tried to lose myself in the commission books, but every time I unrolled a new map, something in it had changed. Streets curled in on themselves, names shifted like fevered dreams. My own modest lane, once a clear avenue to the canal, folded in a little more each dawn, as if the city's hunger had turned back on me. I began to feel the walls I had drawn closing in. Not just on the quarantined, but on me, the architect of their imprisonment becoming the prisoner. It is a myth, I think, that the one who draws the boundaries is always safe. The line, once made, is impartial. Each morning, fewer voices call from the unaffected corridors, fewer candles flicker in windows at dusk, the fishmonger's boats moor rotting along the bank while the market stalls collapse inward like rib cages. The bells toll less and less until only one remains, its keeper too weak to pull the rope more than once a day. I charted the decline as a true professional should. Daily increments in neat hand, the losses annotated in red ochre. At night, I swore I heard walls themselves breathe wetly, phlegmatic rasps echoing through the stone as if mortar sweated with the same fever that filled our lungs with fluid. No one can leave. The gates remain sealed, the cordon unbroken. And so we drown slowly within our tomb, the wet death claiming us one by one, buried alive by my own hand. Why write this? Cities are forgotten in a decade, maps redrawn. I scratched these words with a trembling hand, my fever rising like the tide. The map hungers still. I feel it pulling at my bones, as I once pulled at the world's. But if confession is atonement, let this be mine. I seek no absolution, only that someone, mapmaker, scholar, child, might find these words when I am gone and remember a place where people lived and drank, sang and despaired, and in that trembling hour before full dawn, dared believe they mattered. I do not plead or accuse. Every name is inked beside mine in the ledger of the damned. The line I drew cannot be undone, the city will vanish, and these words may be all that remain. A city exists in its people. And when the last of us falls silent, all that breathes is memory of loss. Thank you so much for listening to my narration of this wonderful story. Don't forget to support the author, which I have linked in the description, as well as the original story. And I just want to give a quick shout out to my patrons, Scott, Old Penguin, Ellie Hutmeyer, Mr. Sankofa, Austin My Love, Rinku Star, William Hartley, Cupcake Hips, Alonzo, Icy Narrates, Jesse Hartley, Eric Cifuentes, Lawrence Wallen, and Melissa Perez. I also try to link a different charity or a different cause every month and maybe a little more. So don't forget to check out the description to support the author of the story you just listened to and to maybe help somebody else out, even if it's just $1. As always, if you guys have a prayer request, please let me know in the comments, shoot me a message on Discord. I would love to know how I can be praying for you. Thank you guys so much. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.